Hello, and back again to do some MMA stuff now, and quite a lot's happened, it feels like. I watched Dan Henderson and Shogun, who are in a hell of a fight. It might have not been like the classic that they had, but goddamn, that was a war, and I thought Shogun was going to win. I thought Dan Henderson was out, and then the third round, Dan Henderson just blasts Shogun, and it's like his nose exploded like a ketchup packet on his face and took him out. Dan Henderson never ceases to amaze me, to tell you the truth, because he's one of these guys. If you look at his career, he kind of goes for a bit of a rough patch where he loses a couple of big fights, then people start saying, oh, I think Dan Henderson's done, I think he's about ready to retire, and doesn't look his best, and then he just out of nowhere, boom, destroys somebody, and it's like Dan Henderson is back. And a hell of a fight again by Dan Henderson. But if you look at his career, I've always noticed that. I remember when he after he won the 2 Pride belts, and then he went to the UFC, and he defended his Pride belts against Rampage and Anderson, and he lost both fights. People were like, man, I don't know where Dan Henderson is. And then he comes back, beats Palahares, then he beats Rich Franklin, and then he destroyed Michael Bisping. Then he suffers a big loss against Jake Shields, and then he comes back again, and then he goes for a down. So it just seems to be the story of Dan Henderson's career. And again, what a hell of a fight that was. And if you haven't seen it, feel free to tune in and watch it. It'll be interesting to see what people say about TRT now after this, or what people feel about that, and that can be a topic best saved for another time. Now, what I wanted to actually talk about was a topic that somebody brought up to me, and I know a lot of MMA fans love these fantasy warfare videos where we take a fighter and we imagine what could have happened if he faced this guy and that guy, and someone brought up the topic to me the other day, talking about Fedor in the UFC, talking about what could have happened if he had signed in 2007, 2008, how things could have been different. And I always believed, had he signed in 2007, 2008, I stand very boldly and strong in this, he would have been the UFC heavyweight champion, in my honest opinion, at that time, because he was still, in my opinion, the best heavyweight in the world. I think it came into question in 2009. Anyways, as we were talking about who he would face and who he'd fight, there was an interesting debate I had with people, or discussion, during lunch, and everybody was going on about Fedor versus, there was 2 fighters. Junior Dos Santos was one, but the one that I really want to talk about in the video is Cain Velasquez. And people were really stuck on this topic. So I thought, why not make this a video and talk about it? So guess what? We're going to talk about it. Fedor signs in the UFC. Fedor wins the UFC title. Fedor has a run into 2009, and in 2010, when Cain Velasquez had made himself the #1 contender. Now, what if that was Cain Velasquez versus Fedor in that year? What if Fedor and Velasquez fought each other? Let's just do it like this. Fedor at his very best versus Cain Velasquez at his very best. What would have happened? How would it have gone down? What do you expect? And I'll be honest with you, very interesting fight. And I'm going to say something that I think might be controversial to some people, and it might get me flamed. So I'm expecting, because that's the wonderful thing about the internet, you can say something and people will just go whoosh after you. So I'm expecting to feel the heat when I say this. But Fedor at his very best versus Cain Velasquez at his very best. The one way that I see Fedor beating Cain Velasquez is very similar to how Junior Dos Santos beat Cain Velasquez the first time. He has to catch him with a flash knockout very quickly. Fedor has power in both his hands. He can just explode and knock a guy out with a punch. And I think that that's what he would have done if he had fought Cain Velasquez at his very, very best and Fedor at his very, very best. That's how I see it happening. I can just see Fedor with one of those flash knockouts, or one of those knockouts typical Fedor style, or just coming at him right away and trying to overwhelm him with his punches. The other way I see Fedor beating him would be if he put him in a submission and he just didn't see it coming. And that's the 2 ways that I see him beating him. Now, when I think about it even more, and I think about what could have happened, I actually do think, though, if you ask me who the favourite would have been to have won that fight, I would have put money on Cain Velasquez not Fedor. Now this is where the big controversy comes, because I know so many people who love Fedor who refuse to believe that he, you know, could be beaten even in his prime, and he was a great fighter and he had great fights. But I'm telling you, just hear me out. I think that had him and Cain Velasquez fought, they're at their very best, I think Cain Velasquez beats him. I'll say this, and I'll say it like this. Here's my belief why. In Pride, in Japan, and in rings, to my recollection, Fedor did not have to deal with wrestling very often. I don't think he ever faced a wrestler in Pride, if I'm thinking about it. I mean, and then actually no, he did face Coleman and Randleman, and that we can talk about because that leads into what I'm going to get into. But he fought Heath Herring, a striker and, you know, solid fighter, beat Heath Herring. He fought Semi Shaw, the world-class kickboxer Semi Shaw. Great, you know, another victory he had. I believe he fought Semi Shaw. I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me. He fought Mirko Cro Cop when Cro Cop was the most scary and most intimidating man in all of heavyweight fighting in MMA, and he backed him up and beat him at his own game. Another guy that's not necessarily a wrestler, and obviously Antonio Nogueira, when Nogueira was submitting everybody and making people look like fools and was considered to be the best heavyweight in the world at that time. He beat those guys, but when he faced wrestlers, he did have problems. Now, he did beat these guys, Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman, but Coleman, I believe, took him down. Randleman slammed him, and then when he faced Matt Lindland, who was 2 weight classes lighter than him, a middleweight, Matt Lindland was able to get him down. Now, it makes me concerned because I would say that Velasquez in the modern day wrestling circuit would have been a better wrestler in MMA than those 3 fighters that I have mentioned combined, in my opinion. I believe that Velasquez's cardio, his wrestling, his vicious power, his aggression, and the way that he approaches guys, I could see that being a lot more for Fedor than he can handle. I can see Velasquez getting Fedor down. I can see him putting up his weight against him, because Velasquez is a solid, what, 240-pound guy. Fedor is a 220-pound guy that could really fight at 205. Velasquez is a little bit heavier. He's a better wrestler, got great cardio, can punch, really, you know, really developed his hands, can do a lot of damage to guys. And I just see Cain Velasquez beating him. I can't see Fedor beating him unless he fought him early in his career when he was inexperienced. But now, this Cain Velasquez that we have, I could see Velasquez beating him. And that's just my opinion. And now I'm expecting to get trolled. I could see him and Junior Santos being another tough fight. And I could see Junior giving him a lot of problems. I would believe that he could beat Alistair Overeem, because, you know, Overeem can get knocked out and Fedor can do that to him. Him and Josh Barnett, shame that never happened, and I believe he could beat Josh Barnett though. Maybe at one point he could have beat Josh Barnett. For Doom, we already know what's happened there. Who else? There's Travis Brown. I would give him over Travis Brown right now, although Brown did beat Barnett and he did beat Alistair Overeem, so it's getting a lot of people's attention right now. I believe he'd beat Roy Nelson, and I believe him and John Jones at heavyweight, I think he'd give John Jones some problems. But him and Cain Velasquez, I will put my penny jar on it, and there's a lot of pennies in there, that Velasquez would beat Fedor. Now, I'm expecting to get absolutely flamed now for saying this, but guys, take care. If you haven't seen these videos before, comment, rate, subscribe. I do MMA, I do pro wrestling, I do comic books. I'm going to do a Captain America review, so I would start promoting that now. If you're an MMA guy and you don't want to hear about that dreaded pro wrestling, just don't watch the videos. Just watch the MMA ones. It's okay. It's okay. And if you want to watch everything, feel free to do it. Share the videos. Spread the word. Let's get this channel going. Guys, take care. Love you all. And I've got to eat. Bye.